today we are going to master the key of A minor, and of course from a metal guitar perspective, but we're also going to get into some other genres, some subgenres of metal, and even subgenres of rock. This is a great key for both metal and rock, and we'll talk more about that as we go through this. So we're going to start out with just a basic A minor scale. That's kind of our foundation for what we're going to learn in this video here. So I'm going to play this and I'll put the notes up on the screen. Now, let's call out those notes. I know I just put it up on screen here, but I want to just kind of talk you through this as well. So, again, we're starting with the open A string, okay? And then we're going to go to the second fret of the A string, followed by the third fret, and I'm going to the fifth fret as well. So that's going to be A, okay? A, B, C, yeah, I know my alphabet, D. Now, right here, if you wanted to play the open D string, you could do that, whatever makes more sense to you, or whatever ties closer to what you're trying to capture. If you're writing a song, or if you're learning a song, you know, what sounds best to you, what feels best to you. Is it this or this? Already you're seeing how we can go different avenues. We can go down different paths as we go through the key of A minor, and really any key for that matter. So let's get back to the notes here. So we've got, again, the A, B, C, D, E, F, then a G, and then we're going to end on the A. And that's the cool thing about this here, where we're learning the A minor scale. We end with the same note that we start on. That's just the octave higher. Now, the cool thing is you can take that and continue that throughout the fretboard, and we're gonna go through some examples. Now, another place you can play that, because we're starting on the open A string, if you wanted to start on the E string 5th fret, remember those are the same notes. Let's see if we're in tune here. So E string 5th fret, open A string. I think we're close. Yeah, pretty close. We're in tune. All right, so we can run through that scale, and let's do that now. Let's run through that starting on the E string 5th fret. So remember, we've got our A, then we go to our B, then a C, D, E, F, G, then we end on the same note, just the higher octave of the A. So we've already got two places that we can play all of the notes that are within the A minor key. Okay, we've got this and this. What I like about having that, and again, we're gonna run through other places throughout the fretboard here, but what I like about having both of those options in the lower range here is there are slightly different textures to the notes on the heavier strings versus the lighter strings. Very subtle differences, but sometimes those subtle differences, those are the things that can give your guitar playing and your solo or your rhythm a slightly different character. And you might go after one for this particular feel, for this riff or this song, and you might go after the other for something else. And this is a beauty of playing guitar. This is a beauty of being a musician, being who you are, a guitar player, a musician. This is the cool thing about that, is there are different textures that you can use, different, slightly different sounds that you can get out of playing the same notes in different places. So that being said, I want to now address power chords in the key of A minor. Okay, now you think power chord, well, that's only 2 notes, right? Right? And we're going to go over variations, by the way, too. That's coming up, and we'll be utilizing all the notes that we've played. This is going to all come together, and you'll see how easy and cool this is. So we've got the power chord, which is your first note, or your root note, I'm sorry, your root note. That's the first note you're playing with the power chord. So we're going to start on the open A string for this. Our next note is the 2nd fret of the D string, okay, the 3rd string there. And that note just happens to be an E. So A and E, that makes up the A power chord. Okay, and you might be thinking, okay, well, we'll just play that note and the next note over, which that note is actually called your 5th note. If you play the power chord, those notes together, you've got your root note and your 5th note. So root note, 5th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those together are your power chord, right? Now you might be thinking, well, we'll just use that root note with every note of the A minor scale, and of course we'll follow that with our 5th note to make it a power chord. Now that will work on every note except for the B note, and I'll show you why in a second here. So let's run through the power chords. I'm going to skip the B note because remember, B is in the scale, the A minor scale, but I'll share why that doesn't quite fit in the key of A minor. Now, it doesn't mean you can't play it, right? There are no rules to this at all. So I want you to know that before we go any further. Establish this fact right now. There are no rules, okay? Just because music theory says this has to be this to make up this or whatever, okay, that's fine, but that doesn't mean you can't play it, okay? I want you to know that I want you to give yourself the freedom to play whatever you want, whatever sounds best to you, okay? Because you don't want to box yourself in. This is the problem with some folks being afraid of learning theory, that what they talk about being boxed in, being limited. This might be why, okay? There's no limitations. Theory is only there really just to kind of serve as a roadmap. So kind of look at it that way. In any case, let's go through the power chords, skipping the B. We'll play the A. We'll skip the B. That next note in the scale would be a C. So the power chord for that. We'll go to a D. We'll go to the E. We'll go to the F, G, A. Now, of course, when we get to the E here, you could also go to your open E string and play the power chord there. So you go from D, and instead of here, you could go here. Okay, so let's play the power chords within the key of A minor, and let's start the E on the open E string. Now, let me explain the B note, why we skipped it in this case. Again, it doesn't mean you can't play the B power chord. You could definitely do that. You could go. That sounds just fine, but from the key of A minor perspective here, so that B note, okay, that's fine. We know that's within the key of A minor. However, where is our 5th note of the power chord that makes up the power chord? Well, that's actually going to be the 4th fret of the D string. So that makes that an F sharp, okay? Well, F sharp is not a note within the key of A minor. So typically, you would just know that. Again, it doesn't mean you can't play it. If you want to play it, it sounds cool, by all means play it. So just don't let these become rules. These are not rules. This is only just to help you kind of know the fretboard a little bit better. That's all this is designed to do, and just kind of know what notes fit within certain keys, so you've got that roadmap established. But again, you can always go off the beaten path, and I encourage you to do that, okay? So what I like to do, and again, this sounds fine. What I like to do sometimes, a lot of times I'll just play that. Who cares if that second note of the B or the fifth note of the B power chord, who cares if that's in the key of A minor? Doesn't matter. Does it sound cool? Yes, play it. Do you not like it? Okay, play something else. In any case, what I like to do oftentimes, because I love the way this chord sounds, I like to move that F sharp note up from the 4th fret to the 5th fret. And what does that do? That makes it a G. So now we're playing a B over G. Now, not that I care, because I don't, but G just happens to be, I didn't mean to rhyme, guys. Oh, I could be a rapper now. The G just happens to be within the scale, the A minor scale. But listen to this chord. And you guys have seen, if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you've heard me play these variations of power chords. And we're getting to that next. That's going to be the really fun part of this. So listen to this. As opposed to this. Both sound really cool, but now let's start with the A. Okay, let's start with the A power chord and do the walk up A to C. So A, B, C, right? So we'll do it the first way that we described with just the regular power chords, okay? Now listen to the difference when we play, instead of the B power chord, the B over G. Pretty cool. Now again, I want to reiterate, I'm not changing the way I play the B power chord so that it fits within the perceived rules, the key of A minor. That's not the reason I'm doing that, and it wouldn't be the reason why I wouldn't do that. I just like that texture. Remember, we're talking about writing music. We're talking about playing guitar. We're talking about building like a different character on the fretboard. Okay, and that character, you're designing this character. You're designing this beautiful work of art. So I don't want you by any means to look at this as a set of rules that you have to follow. Well, these notes are in A minor, so I have to play them if I want to stay in A minor. No, you do not. Okay, allow this to be just kind of like a roadmap for you, to kind of like a guide. Okay, and we know the directions, how to get there, It doesn't mean you have to go there, but now you know the way, and I think it will serve you better knowing this information. So when you get on the fretboard and you start playing those solos or start writing those riffs, you're not just doing a bunch of guesswork. It's like, okay, I know where to go to play these certain notes, but sometimes you might hear something else up here and like, but I'm going to play this instead. Okay, so it's not by accident, and accidents are fine too, right? Sometimes you screw up, you play something you didn't mean to play, and it's like, oh, that sounds cool, but you probably don't want to do that all the time. Let's talk about variations of power chords. Now, I'm going to do something with the E power chord within the key of A minor here. Same concept that we use with that B power chord. Okay, so you've got an E. That's the E. Now, you can go from E to F, but listen to this, okay? Instead of playing the typical E power chord, and again, we're talking about variations of power chords. Instead of playing the typical E power chord, first string open, second string, second fret, I use the same concept that we talked about with the B power chord. Okay, I moved it up, right? So I went from the second fret to third fret, which now that means I'm playing an E over a C. And remember, that C, of course, is within the key of A minor, so it will fit, okay? It will fit seamlessly within that key there. So that just kind of gives it, again, a different texture, a different characteristic, right? So listen to this real quick. I'm gonna play the power chords. We're gonna include the B. We're gonna play the B over G and play it that way. And this time I'm also going to play the new E minor that we just discovered, right? The new E power chord and E over C. So check this out. Pretty cool stuff. And that, to me, that's getting into more of like that melodic metal or melodic rock. And again, that's the cool thing about the key of A minor. You can kind of venture out to different subgenres. And again, there are no rules. It's not that you can or can't with other keys, you know, A minor or lower tunings, whatever you're playing. But A minor just kind of, I don't know, there's more of that 80s metal and kind of like just that hard rock vibe that you can get out of that as well, out of playing in that key. It just kind of all fits together. Quick interlude here, guys. If you do not have my free practice guide called Metal Riffs and Licks, grab a copy of that. There's a link in the description of this video. So after you finish watching this lesson here, grab your free copy of that. I give this away to all my YouTube subscribers. My way of saying thank you for being here. I truly appreciate you. And this practice guide, Metal Riffs and Licks, has literally helped thousands and thousands of other guitar players just like yourself. So if you don't have a copy of that, grab a copy of that. Now, if you already have Metal Riffs and Licks, you already have the practice guide, I also have a link to my Guitar Academy in the description of this video as well. This is actually something new that I just launched, so do check that out. But as always, I encourage you, get my free stuff first, watch some videos, get an idea of my style of sharing things, and see if that helps you. I hope that it does. You grab your copy, links in the description. Back to your regular program. Power chords. Let's keep on the power chord train here just a little longer here. So with the key of A minor and the fact that we just kind of talked about some of the rock stuff, some of the hard rock, and even some of the classic 80s metal, let's play a couple power chords on the higher strings. Let's, for example, use the D and G strings to play our F and our G. So instead of this, let's try this. Now you see, or you hear rather, what I'm talking about when we talk about more of that classic metal style, kind of 80s metal, even some of the darker classic metal, right? I mean, we're going back to, you know, bands, everything from like Cinderella and Rat to some of the kind of the darker, more progressive stuff from like Queensryche, something like that. So again, a lot of cool things you can do with a key of A minor. Let's dive a little bit deeper though into variations of power chords. This is something I talk about on my channel here a lot. By the way, if this video is helping, please, you know, take time to drop a comment. Of course, if you have questions, we're not done yet. We've got some cool stuff coming up. Give it a like too if this is helping you. I just want to know if this style of teaching is helping you, because that's my ultimate goal here. If it's helping you understand, you know, just the key of A minor, the notes within, without diving too deep into theory. You are learning music theory right now, but without diving too deep into it to where it feels like you're just learning from like textbook. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let me know if this style is helping. So we've got our A minor power chord, or A power chord, right? And the A power chord is not a major or a minor unless you start throwing in more notes in there. We won't quite dive into that here, but we're going to do what's called a variation of the power chord. All that means is we're just going to change the second note that we play in that power chord. So with that next note, we're just going to change it. I went from 2 to 3. Did we just write a cool tune together, you and I? I think we may have. Sounds cool. But my point is, there's a melody that we just created, right out of the blue. And these are things that you probably already do. If you're not doing them yet, well, you're going to be doing them a lot after you watch this video. At least I hope so. But all we did, again, we just changed the second note. Those notes, and again, these aren't rules, but those notes that we played instead of the normal way to play the power chord, well, all those notes fit within the key of A minor. So that's all we're doing when we talk about a variation of power chords. We change that next note, okay, that second note that makes the power chord. We just change that to something else. And if I'm in a particular key, I like how it sounds if I stay within that key. For example, let's play a variation of a C power chord. Like we know the C, okay, we know that note and that power chord, that's within the key of A minor, so we can go here. So if I want to do a variation of that, I'll just show you the notes here. So we started with the regular C power chord, but then we changed the next note, which happens to be the D string 5th fret, to the 3rd fret of that string, then the 2nd fret, and then the open D string. Because all of those notes, okay, that's your regular power chord, right? And that power chord is a C over G. Then we go. Now the second note is an F, which we know is in the scale, right? Now the next note, now we're combining the C with the E, which again, that's within the A minor scale. Then we're going to play the open D string, which we already know D is part of that scale, that A minor scale as well. And you can continue doing this throughout the course of each power chord. Now, what if I did this? I want to share a seemingly, what might be seemingly called a mistake here. I don't believe there are mistakes in music, especially if it's something that you end up going with. Now, if it's something you play by mistake and you're like, okay, I clearly messed up, that just didn't sound good, then you just ditch it, okay? And that's why we practice. We practice so we can come up with these cool things and create them. We're gonna hit some wrong notes along the way as we're creating things, right? And that's fine. That's how we test things out. But what if I said, well, I'm playing a C power chord, I'm in the key of A minor, right? Playing the C power chord, and I go that second note from the 5th fret to the 4th instead of the 3rd. Now that actually sounds cool, right? But if I play that with some other power chords, I'm just going to make something up, by the way, and I'm going to play that, okay? I'm going to play that version of the variation of C. So let's just throw something out there. Now, you could make that work. That actually sounded pretty cool, even though that note, which again, now we're playing the power chord, the C power chord, 2nd string 3rd fret, our C note, and then we're playing the 3rd string 4th fret, which happens to be an F sharp, which that doesn't quite fit, again, in the key of A minor. Sometimes though, actually a lot of times, you can throw things in that don't fit. Remember, guys, there are absolutely zero rules in this thing. This is all what you are creating. It's all what sounds good to you at the end of the day. You could throw that in there and just make it cool. And that's kind of when we get into some of the more obscure riffs. A lot of the obscure styles of rock and metal, they're gonna go way outside the norm, okay, and play things that maybe even wouldn't make sense in certain genres. This is what I like about the genre, the subgenre of black metal, for example. And you could say the same thing, I guess, about jazz. So we got black metal and jazz. I mean, it's just kind of all over the place. Of course, you can always tie in the theory, terminology with what they're doing. That's fine. But again, I just want to make the point that there are no rules. I know I sound like a broken record here saying that, but it's important that you understand that. It's important that you understand, first of all, okay, we're learning something so that I know the path. I know the roads I can go down here. All right, we've got a roadmap, we've got a guide. But I also know that I don't have to stick to that guide. I can go off the beaten path, play some different things, and just, hear what that sounds like to you. All right, so let's play a couple of other variations. I'm going to play the F power chord, and we'll mess around with the G. So the variations of the F power chord, if you want to stay within the key of A minor here. Okay, so we've got the F, our first note, the first string, first fret, and we've got the regular power chord I'm starting out with, right? The A string, third fret, but I'm also going to the second fret and the open string. So check this out. Now let's do the same thing with the G. And remember how I'm figuring out what the second note is that I'm going to play when I play the variation of the power chord. Well, I'm just going to make sure that I'm playing notes. In this case, for this demonstration, I'm going to make sure I'm playing notes for that second note of the power chord, the variation, that fit within the key of A minor. And that's why, or that's where, you know, knowing the scale, knowing the notes within A minor, that's where it can help you, okay? So that you're not guessing, you already know it. So let's play the notes, the variations of the G power chord. In essence, we did the same thing with the variations of the G power chord that we did with the C power chord variations. The same finger configuration, meaning, you know, on that second, the note on that next string over, fifth fret, third fret, second fret, open, okay? Well, that happens to work with the G as well. That second note that we changed to, all of those notes are within the key of A minor, right? These are the second notes we were playing. And in this. Remember the scale? Now let's, because this sounds cool, so I have to share it with you. Let's kind of do the same thing, just play some variations of those same power chords within the key of A minor on the D and the G strings. And I must actually start with the A minor power chord here, and we're gonna kind of freestyle this, okay? Pretty cool stuff. Now, just for giggles here, let's do something else. We're going to pick the electric back up, don't worry. I'm going to grab my acoustic here. We're talking about the key of A minor, right? Already we're picking out some more variations of that, but let's just kind of go through sort of what I played on electric there. You've got your A minor, and we're not just playing power chords, we're playing the full chords. Pretty cool. All I did was just play other notes, and we're not going to dive into that. Just I played some other notes. You heard some variations of even the chords that I played. I just played other notes that fit within the key of A minor with that. And especially when you're playing full chords on an acoustic, you'll definitely hear when you hit a note that's not within that key. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that totally didn't sound right. Now, one more thing I want to share with you guys. We talked about the scale earlier. Me personally, I never think about scales from the perspective of a scale or music theory. I only know the scale because it helps me build the roadmap, build the path, right? Just kind of like, okay, I know where I'm going, or I know where I can go to get this sound. I know I can go over here to get that sound, right? Of course, I'm going to do my own thing in the interim, though. But just having the knowledge, I think, helps you a little bit more, so you're not just guessing all of the time every time you pick up your guitar and start playing. I believe also knowing what we went over in this video today, knowing this is going to help you improv. It's going to help you come up with riffs on your own, and it's also going to help you, especially the variations of power chords we did, right? Start playing around with some of those single notes, but it's going to help you improv with your guitar soloing as well. So I want to just revisit the A minor scale real quick again, okay? We're not going to play anything, we're not going to play anything ultra fast or anything like that, or who knows, I might end up doing that. But in any case, we learned the scales here. What you want to do at this point when you start venturing off into playing guitar solos, you want to find out where that A minor scale is in other parts throughout the fretboard, right? So we know we start with an A, and again, no rules here. You don't have to start with an A. Like, what if you want to start your solo with a D? Okay, you're free to do that. Again, you're free to do whatever you want, whatever sounds best to you, right? But for the sake of just learning where these notes are, let's just start with an A. So what I like to do a lot of times, especially, and this might help you if you're just starting out, is I'll find the higher octave of that A. So we know this. Okay, your next octave up is this. If you want to find that higher octave, just play the A minor scale. Cool. So now we can start that scale all over, starting here, until we hit the higher octave of that A again. And you can keep going. That was kind of a cool effect. My finger slipped off the fretboard. I think Kirk Hammett said something about that during a certain part of the Master of Puppets solo. His finger slipped off the fretboard and it created this effect. He's like, leave it in there. I'll probably never be able to replicate that again, but let's leave it. It sounded cool. In any case, what you want to do is just find out where that note is, that starting point is, right? So okay, and you can start anywhere. Like, the notes start over on the 12th fret. Now I just feel like jamming, and I hope you do too. Guys, I hope this helped you. Again, this is kind of like a off-the-cuff, and not really any fancy editing in this video at all. Just kind of like you and I are sitting down, just having a conversation. We've got our guitars in hand, and I'm just sharing some things that I hope that help you, and I hope this video helps you. Leave me any comments you have. By the way, if you didn't catch mastering E minor, Well, I'll put it right up there for you. If you didn't see that video, go check out that video. That's very helpful. It's helped a lot of people. If you're wondering what the tone is that I'm using here, well, I've got a video up there that shares the tone the plugin that I'm using for amplifier sounds. So go check that out, guys. As always, keep it metal and keep playing music.